Most of you know I dated my husband for 14 years. And he used to live down the street from his sister Joanne. Joanne lived on the corner, and he lived about 7 houses down. And Joanne and her husband Richie had a Halloween party that we went to. And it was late at night, and we walked because we thought, well, if we're drinking, we'll go ahead and walk home. So it was probably about 12:30 at night, and we're walking home, and it's pitch black. And the street lights were on, but it was very dark. And all of a sudden, as we're walking down the street, we hear this thump, thump, thump behind us. And we both kind of looked at each other, and we went, what the heck? And we walked a little bit faster, and we heard this thump, thump, thump. And the faster that we went, the faster the thump went behind us. And we turned around, and it was a coffin following us. Can you imagine that? A coffin. So, of course, we panicked, and you know how when you panic, you kind of don't know what to do? You're fumbling with the key, trying to get into the house. Well, Jess had the keys, and he's fumbling to get in the house, and I'm pushing him in. And because we were so excited, we didn't get the door closed. Thump, 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 the coffin came into the house. So, ran into the house, and the first thing I did was, I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'm going to lock myself in the bathroom. Well, I'll be danged if that darn coffin didn't follow me. So what did I do? I reached into the cabinet and I grabbed the first thing that I could get. It was cough drops, and I threw it at the coffin. Guess what? I'll be darned if the coffin didn't stop.
Oh, all right.
All right.
That was good.
All right. So I'm here to talk about education, but there are some things that I learned in my 60 years of life about education. And research tells us that between the years of 0, when we're born, to the age of 7, there are things that happen in our life that influence us and how we see ourselves. So if you're to close your eyes and you're to think back to between the years of 1 and 7, for those of us that can remember that far back, and you think of what happened during that time that influenced how I saw myself, what I did, and how I interacted in life. I'll share with you a couple of things about myself. I was raised in a family, a large family of 10. I had 2 older brothers, and Mother always had 3 babies in diapers at any given time. Being the girl, I was the one that loved to talk. My brothers never talked. They acted out and they played, but I was the chatty Cathy. Back in the day, there was a new doll. You pulled the string. It was called Chatty Cathy. That's what my mother called me, Chatty Cathy. Now, my mother was very young. She was 19 when she had her first child. So she was just trying to keep up with taking care of the home, which was on 3 acres, farmland, a lot of work. We didn't have microwaves. We didn't have cell phones. We had 1 car that Dad took to work, so we didn't have cars, and we didn't have bikes. And we were out in the country. So one of the things that I loved to do was talk. And we had a television, but the television was not allowed to be on until Father came through the door and he put the 4:30 news on. He watched a half an hour of news, and that was it. So I loved to talk, and my mother would always be shutting me up because she'd say, if you're talking, you're not working hard enough, and we all have our chores. So I would always run across to the neighbors, that's probably 500 feet across, and I'd talk. Her name was Nelda, and she'd be hanging up the clothes, and I'd be talking away, telling her everything about what was happening in the household. How Mom and Dad got into a fight last night, and my brother got grounded. Well, my mother, pretty soon I hear her call, she called me Cindy. Cindy, get home! She'd chew me out. You're talking too much. You're talking too much. You need to shut up. So what did I learn? My voice was not valuable. That silence was golden, and hard work was the key to success. Now imagine a girl who loved to talk, not being able to talk. Not having a conversation with your mother because your mother was too busy working. So I learned to shut down my voice, which for me was death to my soul. The second second lesson I learned was when I was in kindergarten. And I love boys. I just love boys. And I was 4 years old when I started kindergarten, because if I waited one more year, my sister Karen and I would have been in the same grade. So I had 2 brothers, myself, and then my sister Karen. So of course, I'm only 4, and we didn't have much around the schoolyard, but we had stones. So we used to pick up the pebbles and the stones and play like they were toys. And the teacher, Mrs. Cooper, had this gorgeous son. His name was Randy Cooper, the love of my life. He was a year older than me, but he would sit in his mother's kindergarten class because he didn't start school till a year later. I don't know, maybe he was slow. I thought he was brilliant. But so we would sit out together and we'd play in the stones. And one morning after recess, we'd come in and I'm sitting in my chair. And of course we had the little desks that sit like this. And Randy always sat right next to me. And he'd sit there and he would do his thing and he'd poke my leg and we would giggle, and he was my boyfriend. Well, he one day took his pants pocket, opened up his pocket, and all of the stones fell on the, and it was pitch quiet in the classroom. And of course you hear all the stones falling out. First thing I'm looking at is, she's going to kill me. Because I was always told to behave, be quiet, and listen and be attentive. And if we didn't, we were punished. So in my head, I'm going to be punished. Randy looks up at me, he looks at the stones, and goes, there's more where that came from. What did that teach me to this day? I always thought in terms of scarcity, he thought in terms of abundance. So I always thought in my, there's always abundance in the world. And I carried that through all my life. The third lesson I learned was before I was 7, and I was in 1st grade. And I was a young 1st grader. And I remember the teachers coming to me and asking me, what's your name? And I said, Cynthia. Well, by the time you're 6 years old, 5 or 6, you shouldn't have a lisp. Well, guess what? I had the best lisp in the world. So what did they do? They said, oh, this little one here needs to go to speech therapy. So I was pulled out 3 times a week to go to speech therapy to practice my accent, my snake sounds. And I always missed the spelling lesson. So on Friday, when I came back and we were having our spelling test, I didn't know what the words were. I had no idea what the words were. And so the teacher would be asking the word, we're supposed to write it down. I didn't know. I was sitting next to Dave Winsley, cute kid, reddish brown hair, freckles, looked smart. I thought, he must know. So I'll be copying his. Well, sure enough, we got all the red marks. None of them were right. And I thought, okay, well that's not working. So they taught us phonetics. So I thought, let me use my phonetics. Were. W-R. Okay, I got that one right. Is. I-Z. Got that one right. Oh, I thought I was brilliant. Well, turn the paper in, all of a sudden all the red marks. I guess I'm just not good at spelling. Not knowing that I wasn't there for the lesson, so how would I know? Come report card time, I got a D. What? 1st grade, I don't know what that, A, B, C, D didn't mean anything to me. I was proud. I was showing everybody my card. She talks too much and she has D's. And I was proud. And I just remember some of the girls teasing me, saying, you're stupid, you got a D, you're stupid. I'm thinking, what does that mean? So I went home, I said, Mom, they told me I'm stupid. And she said, well, school's probably not right for you. I always had problems in school too. And so what did I think? I thought I was stupid. So what did I do? My voice didn't matter. Well, there was abundance in the world, but if I'm stupid and I can't learn, all I can do is work. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to be a mother just like my mom is with 10 kids on, and I thought, so that's how I went through my life. And going through your life like that, when you're in school, one of the things that we don't recognize is that it's how we perceive ourselves and how we've learned to be in the world is how we will react when we get into a classroom or a learning experience. So think about the things that have affected you and see whether or not that theory that I just talked about actually works. Now, you see I do have PowerPoints, and everybody loves when you read PowerPoints. Well, I'm going to try not to read too much. There's a couple of them that I will show you because I think it's good data. One of the things that I learned about myself, since I wasn't allowed to talk, I was a lot in my head. And I became very good in math. And I would use math to tell stories. So in the job that I have now, as in institutional effectiveness, what do I have to do? It's amazing, 60 years later, it all comes full circle. I use data to tell stories. And then I use my language, and the best that I can, to try to articulate, to facilitate learning. So, this is something that I find very interesting, that these are nationwide statistics, that 8 out of 10 jobs will require some type of degree or certificate in the future. 8 out of 10 jobs, that's 80%. 30% of the fastest growing jobs will require, at least 50% will require some form of higher education. And that 60% of the nation's population will be Latino by 2020, that was in 2050. So 2050 sounds a long ways away, but it goes like this. I remember being in high school and graduating in 1975 and looking at my baby sister and saying, gee, she's not going to graduate till 1985. Oh my God, that's a long time away. That's gone. So 2050 will be here real soon. And that 20% of the nation's K-12 public schools are Latino. So, now, when I use data, when I talk about data, a lot of times, have you ever heard of the 5 stages of grief?
Yes.
When something happens, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, it's the 5 stages of grief. Well, I say it's the same thing with data. When I'm talking data and I give something, I give information, the first thing people do is they go into shock and denial. And then they say, oh my God, this can't be. Then they get to the anger part and they go, no, this is not right. You can't mean that. Well, and then we get down to right here, the depression, where they say, well, I guess it's true, and there's not much I can do about it. And then we get into where we're talking about the data, we're talking about our findings, and we're talking about what types of solutions are possible, to the point where they finally accept it. Now, when I'm using data, you will find people start here and go all the way back to here. And then they'll jump down to here, and they'll go back up to here. So when I'm talking with people, and I recognize there might be an opportunity to re-explain, I recognize that they're floating in between those 5 stages. So today, as I'm talking to you about some data, you might be floating in between those 5 stages. That's okay. We'll work with it. Okay. Ventura County, one of the things that I try to do is get as specific as I can. If we're looking at the number of workers in Ventura County, this is February 2016, most of the jobs, oops, wrong. Yeah. Most of the jobs are in educational and health services, state and local, retail trade, leisure hospitality, and farm. Now you will notice that there's a large percentage of these jobs that require a 4-year degree, or at least a 2-year degree or certificate. Now, this is where we're talking about salary, not salary, but hourly wage in Ventura County. And I want you to look at the hourly wage in Ventura County. Here, the farm workers and laborers, $10.03 an hour, and that's the largest population of hourly wage. You have retail supervisors. Now, some of those have 2-year degrees, but a lot of them don't. And look how much they make, $10 an hour, $11 an hour. Here's combined food, $9.58. Do you see very many up here that make over $20 an hour?
No.
Okay, you have farm, but they're probably have degrees in biology or agriculture. You see managers, some of them make 50. And this one, registered nurses, $45 an hour. But for the most part, most of those positions make between $10 and $15 to $18 an hour. That's on average, okay? Now look at this. This is really what I find very interesting. These are the jobs that we have here in Ventura County. This is the scale of how much they make. And if you look at this one, which most of us have 2 adults and 1 child, they have to make over $26 an hour. Now, how many jobs did you see on that previous slide that made more than $26 an hour? And I find it interesting, if you're living wage with 1 adult, living by yourself, you have to make about $13 an hour. So what are we doing here in Ventura County with ourselves? We're providing jobs that pay less than what people can afford to live on. And so that's why education is so important to those of us that live here in this county. The more we can facilitate education for our kids, the more prosperous our county will be. And just being in the sciences, my degree was in science, being in the science, technology, engineering, and math, I'm recognizing that farming nowadays is becoming highly technical. So in order to really be able to be in the farming or agricultural world these days, you have to have a science background. And if you don't, then you're the one that's out there picking the crops. Just out of curiosity, how many Anglo individuals do you see out in the fields? How many Hispanics do you see out in the fields?
100%.
Okay. So how much do they make an hourly wage? About $10 an hour? Okay. How much does it cost? Whoops. Oops, I keep going forward.
For just one person, 12.
One person is 12 for a family of 2 adults with 1 child, and most don't have 1 child. So what are we doing? We're saying we're going to have multiple family dwellings so that we can just survive if we're day laborers or we're hourly wage. So these are the types of things when we're talking education and we're talking industry and business in our community, why it's so important that we partner together and we work together. All right, let's look at the ethnicity, because I always like to look at the makeup. If you look at the county, we have about 50% of our population are white. About 30% are Hispanic or Latino, and the rest are what we call non-white or a combination of Hispanic, underrepresented. So we have about a 50-50 split. About 50 are white and about 50% are underrepresented. That's in the county. But if we're looking at our area, let's look at Oxnard College. Now Oxnard College, that's where I work. And most of our students come from our neighboring environments. They come from Port Hueneme, they come from El Rio, they come from Oxnard Union High School District. We do get a couple coming from Ventura, a couple coming from Camarillo, a couple coming from Moorpark, but for the most part, we're a local school. Our makeup is 74% Hispanic. And our Caucasian is about 15%. So if we look at underrepresented populations coming to Oxnard College, it's about 85%. If we look at the job distribution in our community for underrepresented individuals, they're usually hourly workers, and they usually make between $10 and $15 an hour. Now, what does that say about the population of students coming to us? Most of them are first generation. I was a first generation student, and I was, again, my family was not wealthy at all. I've taken my husband out to where I live, and he'd say, how the hell did you get to California? Because I live in a very rural community. And maybe 2 parents of the whole, I had 79 in my graduating class. Maybe 2 parents had degrees. Going to college was not something we did. Getting married was something we did very well. Having children is something we did very well. We were Catholic. The whole community was Catholic. And so we all had big families, from 10 to 17 kids in a family. The only way that I got to college was, you know, I used to be kind of testy with my mother when I was younger. And my mother didn't tolerate talking back very well. And so she had this big long broom. And she would pick up the broom. Or she had also, you know what a bow and arrow is? You know the fiberglass bow and arrow? She took the string off of that and she'd whip that sucker, that'd go, and you could feel the sting. But it kept us in line, except for me. Because I had long legs and I could run. And I'd be running around. And you want to see a sight for sore eyes, seeing my mother, pregnant, running around following behind me. But I learned if I ran fast, she couldn't catch me. It's when I stopped. That's when I needed to be careful because she would always sneak up behind me. But I gained the ability to run. And so when I went to high school, and I had the long legs and I was like stiff, there was a teacher there, and he said, I think you'd be good on our track team. And I thought, track? That's for boys. I said, no, we're going to start a girls' track team. Okay, so I went home and I said, Mom, can I be on the track team? She said, well, sure, go ahead. I turned out to be the track star because I had, by that time, 15 years of running away from my mother, that when somebody said run, I went like lightning. So the only reason that I got to college was because I had someone who took an invested interest in me, my teacher, who told me, you can do it, who would put me in front of the classroom to lead the exercises because I was a hard worker. I didn't talk much and I worked hard and I ran fast. And so what I realized a lot about education, we think of physicians, we think of nurses, we think of radiologists as being healers. What we don't think about is educators being healers. Because not only do they teach us what we need to know academically, but they heal the wounds in our head that we have about why we can't.
Or they'll make it worse.
Or they can't make it worse. And so that's why when I go and talk to educators, other educators such as myself, I talk to them about the serious responsibility of them being a healer as well as a teacher. And taking the whole student. So if we have students that are coming to us, underrepresented, parents never went to school so they don't have a role model, being in a class because it's a second language, feeling stupid and never being successful and being teased, how can we expect our students to ever break free to be who they are unless we take an investment in them? So that's the role of a teacher. That's the role of education, and that's also the role of business. That's why it's so important for business leaders to partner with education. It's so important. So we have the demographics here. Just like I was raised, it's interesting that I would end up in an environment where I understand what's happening. Okay, has anybody heard of the misery index? The misery index is an index, and it's made of 6 indicators, socioeconomic indicators. And you can see at the bottom, it's the poverty rate among children 5 and younger, the percentage of women-led households with children 5 and younger, the percentage of adults 25 and older with high school diploma, the percentage of people who speak English less than very well, the percentage of students classified as English learners, which we have a lot of in our community, and the students that are eligible for free or discounted meals at school. Now at Oxnard College, we have about 84% of our students qualify for financial aid. Does anybody know what the criteria is to be able to, $22,000 to $27,000 qualifies you for financial aid under the bog waiver. So if we have 84% of our students coming to us that qualify, that tells me that their parents either are farm workers or day laborers or single parent and struggling without degrees. If we look at this particular data right here, this is where I think it tells us the story. These are the cities: Santa Paula, Hueneme, Oxnard, Somas, and Oxnard proper. These are the ones with the highest misery index. So the more socioeconomic indicators you have, the higher misery index. And it falls right into our little community, right there. And these are the students that are coming to Oxnard College. These are the students that we're working with. And these are the students that are going to lead our community in the future. These are the ones that are going to run the businesses. These are the ones that are going to be the elected officials. These are the ones that are going to be our legacy. Okay, let's look at the Ventura County earnings and what it means. If you have a high school diploma, 60% greater chance of an income. That's a lot. So we have a lot, and I'll talk about the dropout rate here. But if you have less than a high school degree, you make $22,000 to $15,000. A high school, $34,000 to $23,000. How many of us, if we don't already own our home, could live on $34,000 a year? I can't even pay my electric bill on $34,000 a year. With some college, $49,000 to $32,000. Now this is the mean or median, so it's the average, right? Bachelor's degree jumps up to $77,000. Graduate or doctorate, $102,000. So if we look at a weighted average, it's about $44,000 a year. But if you have a high school diploma, you have a 60% increase in your salary. If you have a bachelor's degree, that doubles that. So that's another reason why education is so important. But if we're having children that are challenged in our K-12 system, how do we get them to be successful in the higher education system so that they can be productive? That's the challenge we deal with every day. And that's where I want to reflect back to what were the 3 things that you learned before the age of 7? How did that influence your learning ability and your belief in yourself when it came to being productive in your community? This is our dropout rate. Now, the reason I went back to 2013 is because 2013, they've been out now already for 3 to 4 years. And they're in our community right now, and we're asking them to be productive. We have a large percentage of our students that come to Oxnard College that do not have high school diplomas. You do not have to have a high school diploma to go to a 2-year college. You do not have to have a high school diploma to go to a 2-year college. So if we look at the dropout rate in Ventura, in the Ventura County, oh, keep doing that. Ventura County, Hispanic has one of the highest dropout rates. Now, for some reason, in 2012-13, we had the Pacific Islander. I don't know what happened there. But for the most part, if we're talking about the populations that have the highest dropouts, it's not the white, it's the underrepresented populations. So if we have kids dropping out of high school and they're making $15,000 to $22,000 a year, what does that mean? That means that could cause challenges with public safety, where now they're doing things where they have to do it illegally or burglarize a theft in order to make it in the community, in order to maintain, or they're homeless. They don't have a place to live, or we have multiple dwellings. Just something to think about. Now, this is what I find very interesting, is that there was a study that was done in 2013. And it said for children that come from underrepresented, low socioeconomic backgrounds, they receive about 6,000 fewer hours of learning time. 6,000 fewer hours of learning time. What does that mean? That means that they come home, they do their work, they help their parents, they're not getting tutoring, they're not going into sports, extracurricular sports activities. They're not hanging out in clubs. They're getting 6,000, by the age of 12, 6,000 fewer hours. So do we wonder why kids that come from affluential homes are more successful? Is it because they're smarter? Or is it because they've had the opportunity to be exposed to things that others haven't? But what's our first perception when we walk into a community of low socioeconomic kids that our English is their second language? They're not smart. They think they're not smart. And if we as teachers walk into a classroom of children who don't have a high expectation of that child because they come from low income, because English is a second language, what are we doing? We're feeding into their belief system that they're not smart. We're feeding into their belief system that they can't do. Again, education is extremely important because they don't have the extracurricular hours. And the families are outspent by $90,000. Question?
Just an observation. My girlfriend works in Malibu at a preschool, and the amount of resources they have there are it just blows your mind. And you could see the tangible difference those resources make in those early. I mean, it's incredible. But again, it's Malibu. It's just, the resources are just falling from the sky.
And parent involvement.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I have some educators in here, so I know that you know. The more involved the parent, the more accountable the instructor. So, if I have a parent that's coming in to me and asking me, why isn't Sally doing this? Why isn't Sally doing this? What are you doing for this? How are you doing this? It's going to keep me on my toes. If I have a parent that comes in, doesn't have a high school degree or doesn't have a college education, or sees teachers as gods, there's a high level of respect for priests, for educators, and physicians. You don't question, you don't ask. They're the person in power, they're the all-knowing. You don't question that, right? It's a matter of respect. So now you get families that are outspent by $90,000. What are you going to do? I'm just going to give you an example. This was years ago when I first started working for the college, and I wrote a grant. It was for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. We had $6 million to work with our high schools to try to get students focused in that area. So I did some visit in some of the schools. And I went to because my background is in science, I went to some of the laboratories, biology and chemistry laboratories, and I realized that in the labs, they didn't have enough chairs, stools, for the kids to sit on to be able to do the laboratory experiences that they were doing. So I went back to the superintendent and I said, do you realize you have a class here? You have 45 kids in that class and you have 20 stools? What do you expect? They're going to stand the whole hour? They weren't aware of it. The teachers did not see that as a barrier to kids learning. So what does that mean? It means we have indoctrinated ourselves to say that below acceptable is the norm. I don't have anybody complaining. I don't have any of the resources. I'm not getting what I want. Nobody's listening to me. I'll just go through the day. I'll get through the day and I'll move on. We need to be involved in education. We need to be part of those classrooms. It's important. It's still happening today. Okay, now, I got a little fun thing to break it up for you. Underneath your seat, don't open it, but grab it. Underneath your seat is a pen and a folder. And I am going, do I have somebody with a stopwatch or a, Larry, do you have, can you monitor 60 seconds for me? Does anybody?
I'm going to do that.
Okay. You don't have to do the extra, but you might want to. Okay. So what I'm going to do, keep your folders closed. Don't open your folders. Okay. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. There are 50 numbers. You have 2 pages. Just do the first page. You have 50 numbers on that page. I want you to start with the number 1, then go to find number 2 and circle it. Find number 3 and circle it. Find number 4 and circle it. Okay? All the way up until 60 seconds is up. Okay? And we're going to see how many numbers, and this is for accountability, no cheating. okay? You must go in sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And you're gonna do as many as you can in 60 seconds. Ready?
No pressure.
On your mark, get set, open up and go. 60 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Keep going.
They're different, right? Are they the same?
Only do one, don't do 2 pages, do the top page.
This. Stop.
Keep going, keep going. No pressure.
30 seconds.
30 seconds up. Another 30 seconds. Push, push. Keep going. You can do it, no pressure.
45.
Oh, 15 seconds left.
Time.
Stop. Okay, put your pens down. Okay. Did anybody get to number 20? Anybody get to 15? Okay. Anybody above 15?
I don't see 15 on mine.
Okay.
It's down in the bottom corner.
What did
Oh, there
you?
it is, okay.
Okay, did anybody get to 16? 17? Okay, 16. Okay, the gentleman over here, 16. What's your name?
Randy.
Randy. You're brilliant. You must be.
boyfriend's name, the first one.
Oh, man.
It's me.
Your last name's not Cooper, is it? Okay, so Randy, how did you go about getting all those 16? What did you do?
Just kept scanning the page.
And so you obviously are the best scammer in the classroom.
I thought this was going too slowly. So when let's say I'm on 5, but then I see 7, I just put my finger on it.
Oh,
That's
that's
You
good.
said you said don't circle it, but you didn't say I can't. put my
That's
finger
good.
on it.
That's good strategy.
I thought of it too late though.
But you didn't win. He won.
I got 13.
No, I went to if I couldn't find 11, I went to 13, and I got it for 12.
That's good. So you backtracked. That's right. But you still didn't win, did you, Barbara? Did anybody feel like they were struggling?
Yeah.
Did anybody feel, because I didn't win, I might not be as smart as him, or I might not be as good, or this isn't something I'm good at? Okay, I'm going to give you a little trick, and we'll see if we can't do better. Okay, take your second page out, the one you didn't write on. And what I want you to do, I'm going to show you a trick. I want you to take your paper and fold it in half like this, evenly in half, just like this. Got it? Now take the other and fold it in a quarter, even quarter like this. Got it? Okay, now open it up. Now what if I were to tell you that you go quadrant by quadrant for the numbers? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're going to look quadrant by quadrant, start quadrant, and so each number in sequence goes to the next quadrant. All right? So now what I'm going to ask you to do in 60 seconds is to do the exact same thing. Start with number 1 and see how many you get done this time. All right? On your mark, get set, go.
No whining. 30.
It's easier.
45. Stop.
Okay. Anybody get to 16?
Oh, look.
Anybody, raise your hand, got past 16.
Oh, pass.
Look at all of us. Anybody get to 20? How about 28? Look at us!
Wow.
Whoa! Okay, anybody get to 35? Whoa! Okay, 40.
Cheaters.
40? 40? John, great job. Okay, excellent. Was that easier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I change the paper at all?
Nope.
Exact same paper. I just made the same copy. Did you feel more successful?
You know, I have a question. Does this tally with how fast you read? It almost seems like you have to do a lot of scanning. So I wonder if faster readers would get a higher score than slower.
Faster readers may get a higher score, but it's not about whether you got a higher score. It's whether you got a higher score the second time after you got the
Right.
instruction.
Did you have a system to write in these numbers?
No. Oh yes, when I did it, I knew I had to write in each quarter because I knew what the game was.
Because I thought you had a system, that's all.
Yeah, no. So I guess what I'm trying to share is, like my dad used to say, if you know the rules of playing the game of Monopoly,
Oh,
you can always win. But if nobody shares that rule with you, and you're trying to figure it out on your own, and you're struggling, it's a lot more difficult. So now, if we have kids that don't have parents that finished high school or graduate, and they don't have anybody to tell them, this is the courses you take, this is the scheduling you take. You don't try to work 40 hours a week and take 15 units of class. You make sure that if there's a tutor available, you go to a tutor. It doesn't mean you're stupid if you go to a tutor. You can be successful. So as an educator, one of my roles and responsibilities is to make people feel comfortable with getting assistance. It doesn't mean they're stupid. It just makes life a little easier so that you can meet your goals. So keep that in mind. It's not necessarily whether one is more intelligent than the other. It's whether one has been given a set of rules and experiences that the other one hasn't. Okay. Did you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Very good.
All right. So this is what we know about California. This came right out of the chancellor's office. That 70% of our students, if they are ready for college, they will succeed. If they're ready for college, they will succeed. If they're not ready for college, they only succeed at 42%. But the kicker is, 3 out of 4 of our children are not ready for college. 80% of the students that come to Oxnard College are under college level math. It takes them 2, sometimes 3 semesters to get through pre-college level math. Now Congress is getting a lot of pressure because we're giving a lot of financial aid to our students. And if we have 3 out of 4 of our students not ready for college, it's taking them 1.5 years just to get through to college level math. And the expectation is, with Congress, you go to a 2-year school, you graduate in 2 years, or at the max, 3 years. Are we setting our students up for failure? They are not going to be able to do it at this pace. All the more reason we need to reach down into the K-12 system and work with our K-12 system to help us be partners in education. All the more reason for industry to reach into higher education and K-12 system. This is what our expectation is, and this is who I am, and I started out here just like you did. And if I can do it, you can do it. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so that's exactly what we try to do. We try to make sure that we connect and we have first year experience, because we call it a first year experience because I remember I didn't know anything about college. I went to the university because my track coach. And when my track coach came and said, you're going to be going to college, you have too much to give. And I said, my mom won't let me go to college. And I went home and I said, Mom, Mr. Blonde said that I should be going to college. And she said, no, you're not gonna go to college. You're gonna stay home, and you're gonna marry a nice man who goes to college, and he'll provide for you. But you're gonna be here, and you're gonna help me. Because I was the second mother. I was the second mother. So I went back to school, and I said, you know, Mom says I can't go to college. And he says, come to Mr. Jackson's office with me. He was a counselor. And he said, how did she do on the ACT and SAT? Oh, she did real good. So she could get into a four-year university if she wanted? Oh, yeah. Mr. Blonde looked at me and he said, I'm gonna get you a track scholarship, you're gonna get an academic scholarship, and you're gonna go to Western Michigan University. And you're gonna be successful. And I started crying. And I said, no, Mom said I couldn't. And he said, no, I'm gonna talk to your mother and you're gonna go. So he called my mom up. My mom said, no, she's not going. And so I went back to school and I was talking to my best friend, her name was Kathy Mahoney. And her mother was one of the educated, she was a med tech. And she taught us 4-H. She taught us all our knitting and our sewing. So I had knitting class that night with Mrs. Mahoney. And I was still crying about the fact that I couldn't go to college. And she said, what do you mean you can't go to college? And I said, my mom said I can't. She said, well, do you want to go? And I said, yeah. I don't want to be hanging 10 kids on my... And she said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll pick you up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Just find a bag, put your clothes in it, and I'll explain it to your mother later. So a week later, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She was outside my door. I had one pair of pants, a dress, one pair of shoes, my chonies, and I was ready to go. I didn't know anything. And back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. And my mother didn't talk to me for a year because I abandoned the family. And I didn't find out until 2 years ago that my baby brother Danny came up to me and he said, you know what, you are our mother. You left us. You abandoned us. You know how angry I was at you for so many years? But what happened to me is a miracle. Because I had one track coach and a counselor who saw in me what I couldn't see in myself, despite my obstacles, put me in a place and knew I would thrive because that's who I was, because I knew how to work. I didn't talk a lot at the time, and I knew that I could do it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be extremely, extremely smart to be able to make it in this world. But what you do need is someone that cares about you. Someone that has a vested interest in you. And if we are going to make a difference in this world, it's that. Maybe 50% of the people will remember what you said. Maybe 25% remember what you did when you died. But they will always remember how you made them feel in their presence. So, when I say to you that there's a demand in education and it's a change, it's because we're going from a rote learning. I remember as a teacher, now I'm old, and so back in the early 80s, I was a teacher. And we had to teach to a test. And it wasn't until recently we realized that is not making our students successful. Because we have students who have a 3.0, 3.5 in high school when they graduate, and they come to us and they can't pass the math test. They can't pass the college level math. Because they've learned to memorize, they didn't learn how to do what I call associative learning, where you take a concept and then that translates to something else that you learn along the way. I'm an associate, you can ask my husband. If I have to remember the number 1, 4, I say, okay, 1 and 4 is 5, 5 is my lucky number, I'll remember 14. Associative learning, that's how I learn. I don't memorize things very well, but I'm great in taking a concept and being able to create it in another environment. That makes a person look brilliant. And academically, you could be, so we have students that are learning rote, but we're expecting complex communication and expert thinking with the technology that we're going into the future. Imagine in 2050 what technology is going to be like. My mother was born in 1934. They didn't have phones. They didn't have TVs. They were just getting out of the Depression. They had a lot of things that she experienced over her lifetime that changed. I was born in 1957. I imagine in another 30 years, we won't even know what this world looks like. Yet we are responsible for educating our children. The only way we're going to be able to educate our children so they can sustain a changing environment is if we teach them how to think. We teach them how to learn. We teach them how to believe in themselves so that no matter what challenge comes to them, they see it as an opportunity, not as a threat. Make sense? Okay, so if we look at the various different ways we taught, and I was guilty of that, and I guess I was lucky in the fact that I started out working with special needs children. I worked with autistic children and children that had learning disabilities. And I remember going into the classroom and teachers were working day and night trying to get the kids to add simple numbers. And the kids weren't learning. And so I went in and I said, what's important to them? Guess what? Treats are important to them. Buying things is important. Feeling a sense of ownership is important to them. So I taught them math, like learning, okay, you want to go into a grocery store? You want to be able to buy something? You better know how much money's in your pocket. You better have an approximate idea of how much it's going to need to buy this candy bar. And guess what? They learned math. Not because they learned 5 + 5 is 10. It's because they wanted a candy bar and they knew that they needed 2 dimes and a nickel in order to get that candy. That was a long time ago. Get that candy bar. So it's the conceptual learning that's so important. And we lost that in education. Now we're getting back to that. Now we're recognizing the errors of our way, but it's all a cycle. So we have to get into more collaborative instruction, more learning, more understanding of the importance of self-efficacy. When I say self-efficacy, it's the belief in yourself. It's the knowledge that you can do it. And don't let anybody tell you you can't, because there will be plenty of people to tell you you're stupid. Had I listened to my girlfriends when I was growing up, guess what? I'd be back in New Lothrop with 8 kids hanging on my skirt, with 52 grandkids. Would I have been happy?
Not that that's bad.
Not that that's bad, but for my soul, I'm adventurous. I love to travel. I love to talk. I love to experience life. I would have been a hollow individual because it didn't meet my spirit. And see, we all have a spirit. We just have to know who we are and what fits our spirit. And that's what children need to learn at a very young age, rather than waiting until they're 60 years old to learn that, like I had to. Right? Okay, so one thing that I do know is that children are naturally diverse and different. Naturally. We're all different. But it's our uniqueness that makes us so special. And it's my specialness and my awkwardness that makes me Cynthia. That makes me who I am. We're curious. One of the things that I was stifled when I was a child is because I couldn't ask questions. But you can ask my husband. I'm always asking questions. And he looks at me, why do you ask so many damn questions? I don't know. It's my nature.
It's a woman.
It's a woman.
That's right.
So that's what I was raised with my brothers who were like that, who didn't speak, and I was always. So it's interesting, you marry your father, you marry your family.
May I clarify that?
Yeah.
When a guy tells you he's getting divorced, you just say, oh, sorry. But when a woman tells another woman you're getting divorced, they want to know all the background, right?
That's true. That's us. That's who we are. But there are young men that are that way too, but because it doesn't fit the role model of a man, they are suppressed. So there are a lot of men that are curious, that want to talk to, that want to ask questions, but it doesn't fit into their role model. See, that's where we have to understand it's the individual. It's not the gender, it's not the sex, it's not the color, it's not the background. It's who they are as an individual, and we're all diverse, but we're all very unique and similar. And we're all curious. And that human life is creative. You know, many of us have gone through Death Valley, And why do they call it Death Valley? Because there's nothing in it. Gets very little moisture, very little rain. It's usually very hot, and there's no forms of vegetation. But something very interesting happened about a year and a half ago, 10 years ago and about a year and a half ago in Death Valley. As you were driving through Death Valley, all of a sudden, you saw these beautiful purple flowers everywhere. Now, did an alien come down and plant seeds in Death Valley? No. What happened was we got rain. And in the right condition, in the right climate, these flowers came from underneath the soil that you never saw and blossomed and became a beautiful part of our experience. There's no difference between that and a child who is nurtured, who is fostered, who is given the proper set of conditions to blossom like a flower and become an experience in our world. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I want to thank you for your attention. I hope it was fun and enjoyable, and you're going to
Cynthia, look what I carry with me all the time.
What is it? People, he says, people may not remember exactly what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. See? Nice. A man after them. That's great. That's great.
And I'd like to, it's a little something.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And Cynthia, that was moving for me. I mean, you
Very
were
good.
really great. And usually I might sneak out during these talks and have a smoke or something. Man, I was entranced with all these facts.
Good, good.
It was really interesting. And I love to hear people that came from nothing and became something.
Thank you.
It means a lot.
Thank you.
And we promise you'll do another one.
I will.
And I will figure out if I have to go to the graveyard and buy them out of the graveyard to get rid of these chairs.
No, that's good. That's good.
Right, Roberta?
She's a role model, Larry.
You know, the exact people that were supposed to be here are here. That's the way I always look at life.
That's exactly right.
Whoever was supposed to be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody want to-
Any questions?
Real quick, if I may, I noticed, and I kind of know, but I noticed in one of your charts for the educational levels of the persons within Ventura County, the females were always a little bit lower in the income bracket for all the other
They are.
occupations.
To this day, women earn about 20 to 30% less than men in the same job.
Yep.
It's perception. That's why we have to be so loud, and that's why we have to be so much. That's why we have to be so
I don't think it's
demanding.
perception, I think it's reality.
It is reality. No, it is reality. But it's perception of the woman's ability versus a man. You go to a restaurant. Do you have a tendency to tip the male waiters more than the female waiters?
No way, Jose.
No.
Oh,
Well, some people do.
Some people do. I was a waitress from the time I was 10 all the way at my uncle's restaurant all the way till through college, and even when I moved here, that's how I met my husband. And men always got bigger tips than I did. And
That's
I was,
really your beauty too.
that's when I was beauty.
Well, that was my experience too, and when you have like a $5,000 difference in pay, and you have more experience than the same guy, and you ask him and say, this was back in 1977, but you're gonna get married, you're gonna have someone support you. What?
Same spirit.
Okay, I want to know, after that first year, not speaking to your mom,
Mhm.
how'd you get together? What did she say? What happened after
That's
that?
the woman part.
Yeah.
That's the-
What ended up happening was my sister beneath me ended up going to college. My mother,
Interesting.
I had 3 sisters below me, and my next sister, it was an automatic, because I was doing so well in college, and my mother recognized that she could do without us, that she would have to bring the rest up. My sister Karen got admitted to the same college that I got to.
Was she a track? She went track?
No, she didn't know, she just went.
No
she-
scholarships.
No scholarships, no, but my parents couldn't pay, she got an academic scholarship. But, my sister Karen's very different than I am, she's more quiet, she's just different. And so she went to the same college, and so that's what broke the ice. When my mother realized that girls could do it, they should do it, And times were changing,
Well,
so, yeah.
So
In
you
fact,
like
if
to
you
see
ask
them.
if you talk to my husband, every one of us in our family are very educated. All of us are very successful and very,
So you were the role model.
I broke the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I broke
did.
the ice, yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
He's got a question?
Yeah.
Role reversal.
Role reversal.
You talked about industry getting involved in college,
Yeah,
but what about the electeds in Ventura County? Because Ventura County is an underperforming county compared to other counties in Ventura, in California. And so what are the college districts doing to work with these elected officials to create jobs or to bring industry into our communities?
well, it's,
Or do you have any role in that?
we've been working with Jackie Irwin, and Jackie Irwin has sponsored a lot of legislation for higher education and funding accelerated programs, so that's one. Hannah Beth Jackson, as far as bringing businesses into, we've done that locally. We've been trying to work with the local cities and trying to bring businesses in. We've been working with chambers to bring them, but they're not elected officials. A lot of times, elected officials don't understand the power that they hold and the perception that a student has of them. And just going into a classroom and talking to students makes a huge impact. It's just whether or not they have time to do it, because a lot of our elected officials are also working full-time. So,
Incidentally, I was called not so very long ago. I'm a retired, fairly recently retired speech pathologist.
that's what I started out as.
Yeah, I was thinking they shouldn't have pulled you. I never pulled kids out of class if it was
Yes.
spelling or math or something. But anyway, just to talk to the kids about what, what it would be like to be a speech pathologist and the advantage. I can't get them to stop calling me because there's such a need. And if you're bilingual,
Oh
it's
my gosh.
even more so. I know because I work with the families.
Good for you.
I just wanted to mention one thing, that in my experience with families for the last 10 years, I'm working through Tri-Counties Regional Center.
Yes,
I made it really clear to the parents that I said, you are probably thinking, if my kid graduates high school, that's going to be great. I said, you've got to look to college. And I'd be with the 2-year-old, the 6-year-old would come home from school with these 100% on this and that, and they'd say, look how smart she is. She needs to go to college.
that's exactly what's needed.
And we start when they're little. In fact, I heard, but I don't know about this personally, that some hospitals are sending moms home with books, books for the new baby and
Oh, yeah,
such a
yeah,
stuff
that
they're
is a
doing
program,
that.
yeah.
And that's, I think, where it needs to
So
start.
you start
Yeah,
reading
right
this,
away.
yeah.
Birth,
does
Talking.
Of course I have.
I'm gonna sit down.
As an educator in college for 35 years, we saw students, we had the same problem, at Cal Lutheran, with people coming in and not having, basically, being able to write a sentence. They didn't have math scores and stuff. And there are some of them that you want to say to them, there are other vocations. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ever have your plumber come over and see how much he makes an hour? That kind of stuff. So that's got to be balanced in there somewhere, that it's not a bad thing to do.
Right.
And we have such a need now. John was telling me about all the managers of the wastewater plant with these very unsexy careers, but they're going to need it because that whole generation is retiring right now.
And it's interesting you would say that, because we've been talking with the city of Oxnard, because they cannot recruit wastewater and water technicians. And so we're creating, under our career technical education certificate, a certificate so that they can get in 12 to 18 months, the certificate to be able to be proficient in those particular, because it does take a level.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. That's why Oxnard focuses a lot on career technical education. The balance is having an expectation that's all they'll do, that's all they potentially can do, versus if they choose that, that's wonderful, but they don't choose it because they feel they can't do this.
Yeah.
So it's again, knowing the soul of the individual and what their desires are and meeting that because they want it, not because they think they can't do this. So that's as an educator.
Do you ever go to high school and colleges and speak like you just did today?
I do it all the
You
time.
do?
I do it all the
Oh,
time.
that's great.
I do it all the time. That's one of the things, in 2008, when I started working with Oxnard College, I think that's why I was hired, is because I realized the importance of going down from 3rd grade all the way to high school and getting that spirit burning at that level. So by the time they got to our level, they kind of felt a little confident about themselves. The other thing that I do is for students that come to us at Oxnard College, I talk to them about the importance of believing in yourself. And what do you do, and what does that mean? And how does that look? And how does that affect your life overall? And it's a different little spin on education, because it's not necessarily academic, but it's what is needed in order to be successful. Persistence, and keep going when the going gets tough. A lot of us don't know how to struggle. We don't know how to struggle. We don't know how to hit a struggle and work through it. We have enough confidence to work through it. So what do? We avoid it and run away. Eventually it's going to catch up with us.
You know what, too, it's not only talking to the kids to inspire them to reach, it's getting the parents who are uneducated and don't know. My parents, my dad had a high school education and my mom made it through 6th grade. You know, they always wanted me to go to college, but they didn't know how to facilitate that happening.
Yeah.
So I ended up in a Keels Business College, and then I got a job, and then I started going to community college at night after I figured that I'm not gonna get where I wanna be. You know, so I think it's reaching out to the parents.
And you
now-
graduated. You
Yeah.
graduated. Yeah.
Yeah,